Alright, let's try a let's try a sound check. Hi everybody, can you hear me okay? Awesomeness, alright. So we don't have anyone typing today, and I don't have enough hands to do everything, so I'll just have to go with the voice only, and I hope you can all hear it well. So this is part 2 of the layers class. I don't know how many parts there's going to be, but this is part 2. If you didn't see part 1, you'll probably want to go back and see that. There's a link posted on the forum, so you can get it there. I should probably grab it, but I can't grab it now because I'm doing the video. So yeah, but you want to watch that to catch up to where we are, because I'm not going to go back through those things today. What I want to try to do today is take the things that we learned from last time about layers and how they work, and come up with some of the more fun and practical applications of them. Oh, and by the way, I really want to thank everybody for voting for me for best class teacher. I never think of myself that way, but it's very nice that y'all are enjoying the classes, and I just really enjoy doing them. So thank you so much. Okay, so before we actually start with what I have planned, I wanted to kind of go off on a tangent a little bit, because this is kind of just a fun thing and a little trick that you can do if you have a sketch that's just failing. I have a lot of failed sketches. This one just didn't work out for me. I don't like it. So I'm going to show you something that you can do to kind of retrieve it or use it, make it somehow useful. And no, Judy, we don't have anyone typing today. PK is driving, so he can't transcribe. Anyway, so I'm going to use layers to do something with this sketch of mine here. Right now it's on two layers. There's a bottom layer and then this kind of weird effect layer on top. Yeah, if you want to type, go for it. That'd be awesome. Okay, so I merged those two layers into one layer, and now I'm going to use the kaleidoscope filter on this strange sketch of mine. So I'm going to choose the layer it's on, I'm going to choose filter and kaleidoscope, and then I'm going to play with the controls until I get something kind of interesting. Okay, so now I have this very strange looking pattern. And step two, what I'm going to do with this now, yeah, it's very creepy. I'm going to transform it. I'm going to use the transform tool of the layer menu, and I'm going to set it to tiled, and then I'm going to shrink it down with tiled on. Okay, so now what I have is this, it's kind of interesting pattern that I've created out of my original sketch, and it's all on one layer. I'm going to move this layer up now to the third layer. Just going to drag it up there. All right. And now that it's on that layer, I'm going to set the blending mode of that particular layer to on. And that will cause everything to disappear temporarily, because what on does is it limits the layer from any drawing or painting where there's nothing underneath it on the layer directly beneath it. You'll see why in a moment. Alright, so at this point we have our strange pattern on layer 3 and nothing on layer 2. So I'm going to select layer 2 to do my drawing on. And now for the drawing, I'm going to use the vector tool, and I'm going to set it to fill on and gradient on. And now I'm going to draw an orange circle. Let me set it to circle constraint or oval constraint, whatever it is, and pick an orange color, and then I'm going to draw that on this layer underneath the one that has the pattern on it. So now my pattern has been attached onto my sphere, onto my circle, and anything that I draw on layer 2 will automatically get that pattern imprinted on it like that. Yeah, sorry Judy, I'm talking too fast, aren't I? Yeah, it's fill was on and gradient was on, and the shape was set to circle. Okay, so let's look at our layers. We have 2 layers now. One has some circles and ovals on it, and one has our strange pattern that we created from our failed sketch on it. Oh, there's a feature suggestion, PK, with the dictation. Wouldn't it be cool if when I was talking on the live stream, it also transcribed my voice using the voice recognition right into chat? Okay, anyway, now I'm going to go to the bottommost layer, which is currently empty, and I'm going to fill it with a color. To do that, to fill a layer with a color, you choose the layer, you choose the color fill button, and then you pick the color. And as long as we're playing with it, let's let's take all these three layers now and merge them together. So we'll go to the bottommost layer and we'll choose merge all. And now that we have this sort of three-dimensional thing, yeah, they do kind of look like cookies. Let's do the same thing again. Like, let's use the kaleidoscope filter on this now and see what we get. Now you can see how this is like automatically, without me doing any work whatsoever, creating some interesting gradations and patterns and things that I can use for who knows what. I mean, I'm just playing around, but it's a lot of fun. Alright, so let's transform this layer again with tiled on and see how that looks. Starting to look like some sort of alien landscape. Now you can make some really cool backgrounds this way. You can again use them as textures on objects that you're creating using the on mode. And there's one more thing that you can do with it. Well, there's probably a lot more things you can do with it, but one that I want to show you. I'm going to move this layer up a couple layers, and this time I'm going to set the mode to overlay. So we'll move the layer up and we'll set its blending mode to overlay. And now that the layer is set to overlay, what that will do is it will overlay any layers that are underneath. So any drawing or painting that I do on layers underneath there will take on that texture. Let me just get a brush out here and paint on here, and you'll see what I mean. I'm just going to use the regular soft round brush and just brush some paint on here and see what it looks like. Yeah, even if it's a couple layers down, no matter, as long as it's underneath the overlay layer. Of course, I've just used it here to make, some kind of strange pattern. But what's interesting about the overlay effect is, since it overlays everything, you can use it to produce texture on whatever it is that you're creating. If you're doing a face or a rock, anything, you can put this overlay pattern on top of it, and it automatically gives it all this little tiny detail of texture that can be very interesting. And of course, if you actually plan it, which I obviously didn't do this time, I just was messing around and came up with a random texture. You can do stuff like dragon scales or fish scales or feathers or anything like that. Use the layers, transform it in tiled mode, move it around until you have a nice repeating pattern, and overlay it on top of whatever it is you're doing. Alright, so any questions on that crazy technique right there before I get on to the actual meat of the class? I'll just show you a couple of the patterns that I saved out that I created this way that I thought were cool, and I might want to use those again later. Yeah, you can smudge it. You can do anything you want to it. This one I created from another failed sketch. I didn't like the way it looked, but I kind of like this pattern. Yeah, bacon and pancakes. Yeah, that's it. That's what I meant to do. Okay, anyway, let's move on. I have a little sketch that I created for us to play with here in this class to demonstrate some of the more practical applications of layers. There's of course lots of applications of layers, and I think that everyone who uses them comes up with their own. But I'm going to show you a few that I often use and that I find a lot of fun and very useful. Okay, so what I have here is a sketch with 4 layers. It has a gray background, it has an eye on one layer, a nose on another layer, and a mouth on another layer. Sometimes I like to do this when I'm creating a face. Tori, I do not know how Noelle did her sketch, and I haven't seen that particular sketch, so I don't know. You'll have to ask her, I guess. Actually, LED, if you go back and look at the first class, you'll see one way to create a three-dimensional sphere using patterns and stuff, yeah. Yes, Petey. Petey the P. Okay, anyway, so I'm going to hide the nose and the mouth temporarily, and we'll just play around with the eye layer. Just so you can get some ideas of what you can do with layers to kind of give you a leg up. It's a wonderful tool for creating. It's a wonderful tool for arranging items on your canvas. No, you do not have to merge to make overlay work. The overlay will overlay all the layers that are underneath it. If you put it on the topmost layer, it will overlay everything. Alright, so we've got this eyeball here, and I have moved it up so that there is an empty layer underneath it. Now the reason that I need an empty layer underneath it is because I'm going to copy it. In the layers menu there is a copy button, and what that will do is take the layer that I've got selected and copy it to the layer directly beneath it. You want to be careful with this and make sure that it's an empty layer that you're copying onto so that you don't destroy a layer that you want to keep. Alright, so now that I have a copy of the eyeball directly underneath it, of course you can't see it because it's directly underneath the other one, I'm going to use the transform tool to move it around. First I'm going to select the transform tool, then I'm going to push the flip X button, which will flip it horizontally, and then I'll move it around a little bit. So I now have two eyes. Of course, I can play around with these. I can change their position while I'm experimenting. I can change the size. I can change the rotation, all by pinching, zooming, dragging, while transform is in effect. Yeah, it actually created a perspective effect, didn't it? Kind of cool, kind of fun. Alright, we'll leave it flat for now though, just to make life a little easier for the class purposes. Now let me turn the nose on. Well, no, let me turn the mouth on first. That'd be more fun. Alright, so here we are with the mouth on, and I can do the same thing with this. I can move it around, I can change its size, I can stretch it, squish it, do whatever I want to it until I think it looks cool, or at least interesting. Depends on the effect, you know, depends on my mood. Sometimes I want it to look weird. So it gives you an idea what you can do with the mouth. So we'll leave it like this for the moment. We'll try not to get too weird. That would spoil the whole effect of it. For the class, we're going to keep it more normal because otherwise Goth Daddy will want me to sing. All right. We always want one more song, yes. I actually play live music online. I do a streaming live show on Second Life, usually Fridays and Saturdays. So, yeah, that's another thing that I do when I'm not working. All right, so so now I have this nose here. No, it's not a DJ thing. I play the guitar and sing, and I have my various tracks and loops and stuff that I generate, and I trigger them and mix them live. Anyway, this is not the time to get into that, but yeah, that's just another of my hobbies. Okay, so back to our nose. I'm going to play around with the nose a little bit, make it smaller probably, or maybe make it bigger. But this is a way that you can mess around with the features of the face, because moving a feature, even a little bit, changing its size, really has a big effect on the overall face. So it just gives you a way to, since they're all on separate layers, to play around with them, you know. And of course, you don't have to limit this to faces. Anything that you're putting on your canvas that you might want to reposition, put it on a separate layer. That way you can move it around, resize it, copy it. Alright, anyway, you get the idea. Are there any questions on that basic idea of putting different objects on separate layers and then being able to move and resize them as you create the drawing? Any questions on that part? Okay, so let's go on then. We'll take our four layers that have features on, the two eyes, the nose, and the mouth, and I'm going to merge them all together. Starting at the top one, I'll say merge, merge, merge until they're all on one layer, but still separate from the background layer. And let me save this out so that we have a copy of this to show as part of the class upload later. Okay, so now that I have all the features on one layer, I now have all of the transform features available to me for the whole face because it's all on a single layer. Alright, so now let me move the entire face around using transform. Yeah, well, I was getting extreme, but just to show you that you can play around with it, change its size and shape a little bit. You never know. Sometimes you'll find something that's really cool. Sometimes they'll just like, ah, what's that? But it's fun and it's useful. Alright, so now that we have this, we'll leave the face there, I guess. I'm going to do kind of a rough sketching over the top. So I'm going to choose the layer above the features, and the reason I do that, the reason I choose a new layer is so that I can scribble on it, I can sketch, I can change things, and I'm not actually messing up anything. It's like it's on a separate layer, I can always erase it. It's what I call non-destructive editing. A very important feature of layers. It lets you experiment without messing up anything that you already have that you like. So using this, I can like try different things. You know, maybe try some different hairstyles. I could try a different shape for the face, for the chin, whatever I want to do. It's all on a separate layer, so I haven't touched anything. Like it's not everything I have underneath there is still separate. So I can turn this on and off and try a different one. Yeah, so so you get the idea. You can play around with it. Now I want to show you something else that you can use layers for. Let's say that at this point I'm looking at this thing and I think to myself, you know, I really don't like the mouth on this. I want to change that around a little bit. So what can I do? I mean, I've already merged it down onto one layer. Does that mean I'm stuck? No, it doesn't. Let me show you how you can get out of that. The hairbrush I used is one that I made from some little... I like to make hairbrush, different hairbrushes. They're mostly just dots. Let me see if I can show you the way it looks. Big secret to the hairbrush is make dots, some gray, some black, and then set the flow really low, like 2%. That becomes a hairbrush. You can make lots. They're easy to make. Alright, anyway, I was going to show you how we can still change the mouth. So what I'm going to do now is I'm going to put an empty layer underneath my features layer, and then I'm going to copy the features layer down, so I now have 2 copies of the features layer. Okay, so I have the 2 layers now that are identical. I'm going to turn the top one off temporarily. Then I'm going to choose the vector tool. I'm going to set it to fill mode with gradient off this time, and I'm also going to set it to erase mode. What that does is it allows me to easily erase any shape that I want, and I'm going to use it to erase just the mouth off of this layer. For the vector erase, you choose the vector tool, fill is on, gradient is off, and you set the mode to erase. And now that we have successfully shut this girl up, she was talking too much. I had to get rid of her mouth. Okay, so now I'm going to go back. I'm going to erase. I'm going to make this layer invisible. And go back to the other layer, which still has all the features, and make it visible again. And now I can use vector erase again, and this time I'm going to erase everything except the mouth. Leave the mouth there. And there we go. So now I'll turn the other layer back on, and I now have the mouth on a separate layer again. So I've used copy, and I've used erase, and I've isolated the mouth again. So now I have control over the mouth, and I can change its size and shape independent of the other features again, in case I just didn't like where it was. So that's a useful technique for any time that you have something and you say, it's just a little bit off. The eye's too big, it's too high, the nose is squished or whatever. You can isolate it onto a separate layer and then change it. And of course you can also, now that we have, she talks more with a smaller mouth, it's just a higher pitch. Okay, anyway, maybe we don't like the mouth at all, so let's make the mouth invisible. Go to a new layer and try some different mouths. Now she's mad because we said she was talking too much. The wonderful thing about faces is very small change can affect the whole thing. That's why I kind of enjoy putting things on separate layers. That way I can play around with it and decide what I want. To put a layer underneath another layer, you just drag it down. you'll have a bunch of empty layers that are at the top usually. And you just grab one of those empty ones and drag it down to below the other ones. In this case, it doesn't matter since they're not overlapping. Anyway, all right, so I'll put the original mouth back, but I just wanted to show you that, especially during the creation phase of a sketch, feel free to experiment. Use layers to isolate the things you're working on and change them. Try a few things. That gives you a lot of freedom as a digital artist that a traditional artist doesn't have. They have to, if they want to change something, they have to repaint the whole thing. We don't have to do that. We can stick it on another layer and play with it. It's awesome. Okay, so we got any questions so far on any of the stuff that I've showed you so far? Yeah, I know what you mean, Judy. I try not to merge until I have to as well. And I always save before I merge in case I really do have to go back. Well, you can't go back and keep everything you did, but you can go back to that point. You have to reload the sketch that you saved and start from there. Okay, so I wanted to show you a little bit about how layers can help you with coloring when you want to add color to a sketch. In this case, of course, I've started out with just a grayscale, and I decided I want some colors. There are a lot of different ways that you can color a sketch. If you started out like I have here with just shades of gray, that's what I call a value sketch. It means there's no color, it's just darks and lights. So if you have a sketch, even if it does have some colors to it, you can still do this, but it works best on a gray sketch. So we're gonna go back to our good old overlay mode and start there. It's one of the ways that you can add color to a sketch like this. Yeah, so now the cool thing about overlay mode is that it overlays, but it doesn't cover up what's underneath. So if I put color on an overlay layer, it will lay right on top of whatever's underneath there without actually changing the values very much. It does change the values a little bit. So let me show you. I'll get some colors and I'll just paint them over top of this using overlay mode. Okay, so there I put sort of a skin tone over the whole thing. Yeah, this is on a layer above the other layers, and the layer is set to overlay. And then I've painted this pinkish color on top. And I'll Grab a little blue maybe for the eyes, a little red for the lips, put that in there. Put that in there on the same layer, the one that I already put colors on. Those I'm going to replace the colors now with these others. And then I can do the same thing, add a little blush to the cheek area with some orangey kind of color, and just paint a little tiny bit of it on there. Alright, so what's nice about this is I don't have to stay inside the lines very well. I can just kind of paint over top of my sketch that I've already have, and it overlays. It just kind of automatically works. Lots of fun. Okay, well, let me show you. If I was to change the blending mode to normal, this is how it would look. You see, normal covers it up. Normal is opaque. It doesn't overlay what's underneath, it replaces it. Whereas the overlay actually combines with what's underneath. You can use some of the other blending modes in similar way. For example, multiply. Let me switch this to multiply. The difference between multiply and overlay is multiply will always darken. So it combines the colors in such a way that they get darker. Sometimes that's a cool effect, though. You might want that. So let's try multiply just to see what we get. can see how it didn't erase what was underneath, didn't cover it up. It's still an overlay type of effect, but in this case it's always going to get darker. So it's just a different effect. You might want it. There's another mode that's just called color, and the way that color differs from the other two is color only adds color. It doesn't make it any lighter or any darker. In fact, it hardly even matters how light or dark the color is that you put on the color layer. It will just color what's underneath it. Sometimes that's exactly what you want. Usually, for me, overlay is more what I want, but let's try color just so you can see how that looks. The various other blending modes that are in there, burn, dodge, there's a whole bunch of them in there. Hue and saturation and what have you. You can experiment with them. Some of them are good for certain things and some of them are good for other things. I don't have time to go through all of them today, so we're just going to concentrate on these few for now. Alright, any questions so far on coloring with overlay? Use two fingers or a finger and a thumb and then pinch them together to make it smaller. Spread them out to make it bigger. No, you don't have to fill the background. I'm using the background as part of the skin color though here. Like I didn't actually draw a face, I just drew features on gray. So you would need some kind of color under there. If I got rid of the gray, there'd be nothing for overlay to overlay, because overlay doesn't do anything if the underlying layer is empty or white. Actually, that's a good lesson. I'll make the grade disappear. I'll make that that layer invisible. You can see that the overlay now only affects where there's actual something underneath, some color. Otherwise, it doesn't do anything. So that can be useful. Sometimes you want to have overlay work on just the parts where there's paint. I'm not sure what you mean. How do you make sure the color's not going all over the place? I mean, it kind of is going all over the place. It's wherever I painted it, it shows up there. And, well, wherever I painted it and wherever there's something underneath for it to lay on top of. Oh, in the eyes and mouth, I was just somewhat careful where I put the paint. Let me show you the overlay layer. I mean, I wasn't that careful, but I was reasonably careful so that it didn't go outside the edges too much. That's what I actually painted on top, on the overlay layer. That's how it looks if there's nothing underneath. Looks like Mr. Bill. Oh no, Mr. Bill! Yeah, if I was to move the color, it wouldn't be in the correct positions anymore. I can show you that. I will move the overlay layer around a little bit just so you can see what happens. So does that make sense then? Yeah. Now let's put it back. This is why we have undo. Okay, so there's never enough time. There's one more thing that I'll show you today, and then we'll just have to leave it at that. I want to show you a little bit about using multiply to do shadows. So, unless there's more questions on this part first, last chance for questions on this part. No, not exactly. What is it? Any petal lover? 413. Overlay is a blending mode, one of the modes of the layer, whereas fill is to fill a layer with an entire color. Actually, if you watch my first class, I go into that in a bit more detail, so it might be worth it to you to go check that out. Yes, Judy, I was just moving the overlay layer around just to show you how it no longer lines up. Alright, so yeah. multiply. We looked at multiply a little bit when we were changing the different modes. And like I said, multiply always makes whatever's underneath it, any layers, all layers are affected. Anything that's underneath it will make it darker. Yes, that's right. I use transpose and move the layer around. Okay, so now I'm going to pick a layer above all these other layers, and I'm going to set its mode to multiply. I'm also going to set the layer opacity slider to about 25%. Yes, it affects every layer underneath. So now that I have my multiply layer, anything that I draw on that layer will darken the underlying layers. Now if I use colors, it can have some strange effects, sometimes nice. What we're going to do is we're going to draw just with black. That way it will only darken and it will not modify the colors in any way. So to reiterate, we've got a multiply layer set to 24.5% opacity, and we're going to draw on it using black. Now, for those of you that are wondering what does opacity do, it affects how transparent the layer is. If it's 100% opacity, that means that anything you draw on the layer is going to be opaque, assuming that it's opaque. There's more than one transparency. But the layer transparency, the opacity setting, makes it more transparent as you turn it down. So I've turned it to 25% opacity, which means that it will cover up to some degree what's underneath it, but it won't completely obscure. So just to demonstrate, let me use vector and draw on top of this in black on our multiply layer so you get an idea. Now I'll play around with the opacity. I'll make the opacity 100% just so you see how that looks. So at 100% nothing shows through. Then as I turn the opacity down, more and more will show through. Let me go 50%. I mean, why set the blending mode to multiply instead of normal? It's just a different look. If I set it to normal, it will be kind of similar, but it has a tendency to change the colors in a different way. I like the effect of multiply because it comes very close to what real shadows do. Now, obviously there's no rules when you're doing art. If normal mode looks good to you, use it. Depends too on what colors you're painting with. Since I'm painting with just black, there'll be hardly any difference. But I often use colors for my shadows, and multiply looks prettier to me. Alright, so there I've turned the opacity down much lower now, 14%. You get the idea. Now a lot more shows through and the darkening effect is much less. Okay, so I put in a couple more shadows just for the heck of it. Now, something that you can do with the shadow layer to make it look a little less harsh is to use a blur on that layer. One of the filters that we have available to us in the layer menu is called blur. There's two blurs if you have a newer version of the software. I think it might only be in the beta version, I don't know. But anyway, there's blur and there's Gaussian blur. They're both blur. One is just a little more fuzzier than the other one. You want me to just color? So you want me to turn the multiply off? Alright, I can do that, yeah. Okay, so now I'm going to use the blur filter on the multiply layer, and that will soften up the shadows a bit. You're talking about the colored shadows. Now we'll have to go into that another time. It's a complicated subject. For now, we'll just go with black. Black is actually quite useful anyway. So there you can see the effect of the blur. It's just made it look a little bit more shadowy, I guess. Softer edges. Most shadows have soft edges unless you're in a very harsh light of some kind. Of course, if you're doing a cartoon type drawing, then you might want to keep the sharp edges because that's part of cartoon style. Alright, any questions on that basic idea there? Multiply to do shadows. Alright, one more thing just for the heck of it here. We're about out of time here. But let me take that pattern that I made before, the blue one, and I'm going to move it, I'm going to load it into this sketch on a layer above all the others using load image. I saved it out into my photos. Now I'm going to load it back into this sketch. And now I'm going to set it to overlay, just because it sounds like something fun to do. There we are. I set it to hard light. That's another blending mode that we didn't get into today, but hey, you can play with them and just see what they do. You can have a lot of fun with blending modes. We'll have to do a whole blending mode thing, I guess. Alright, so that's going to have to be it for today because I'm out of time. Any final questions before we go? Sure, Tori. The reason that you merge is because you, for whatever reason, want things to be on a single layer. Possible reasons for that would be because you want to be able to move them all together using transform. You can transform only one layer at a time. So if you want everything to move together like we did with the features of the face, you want them all on one layer. Another reason would be because you want to apply a filter to them. And you want the filter to affect everything on that layer, so you have to put them on one layer. There's other reasons, but those are probably the two main ones.